Platform, get noticed in a busy world, a step-by-step guide for anyone with something to say or sell. One of the main arguments in this book is that you want to start with wow. You want to wow your readers, wow your customers. And what we really want to think about is how to bake the wow into the product itself, into the service experience, etc. So for example, in my product management course, I talk about shampoo that has real gold in it. So I would really think about how to create product features that really have word of mouth value and create value for journalists so that you can get free PR and going beyond just creating value for customers. You want to aim for surprise. You want to create anticipation, something people get excited about. You want to have a feeling of privilege so that people feel glad to be associated with the wow experience that you created. I would say that your product wants to have soul. There are a lot of products out there that don't really have soul, especially those that are designed and kind of hacked together through agile methods. But then there are other products that are consciously designed. They're creating masterpieces. So for example, a lot of products from Apple have that soul. What is the product experience you want to transform into a wow? Maybe it's how people enter your store. Maybe it's how people leave your store. Maybe it's what happens when people first open your product package, etc. How do I want the customer to feel? Do they want to feel excited? Do they want to feel transformed? And think about what are normal expectations in your product category and how could you exceed those expectations? So an example of a product that really has wow embedded in it is this experience from Cirque du Soleil called Ka. I went to see this. I thought it was outstanding. It was a wow experience. It was emotionally uplifting. It was sensational. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was magical. Have something of value and find the most powerful way of getting that message to the people who benefit. And that's fundamentally what you're doing in business, is trying to create value for people who are going to benefit from that. So to get the message out, public speaking has been shown to be one of the most effective methods, particularly in professional services. I've seen the data on this. And you need to keep in mind that people's attention is a finite resource. They don't necessarily want to sit through a 10-minute preamble before you get into the meat of your message. So that's why it's so important in marketing and in content to have what's called a hook, that thing at the beginning that captures people's attention. Then you can kind of slow down and get into the details and give context. Create a product experience that exceeds expectations. For example, the iPhone got more press coverage than the entire Consumer Electronics Show. That's the kind of power that you can create when you're trying to exceed expectations and not just meet a mediocre value proposition. Take a stand for greatness. Be brave. Be bold. Do something that other people are not doing. Give people an exceptional experience with your product. Your product should have a memorable name. And a good example of this, in my opinion, is lemonade. Lemonade is not a drink. Lemonade is an insurance company, but it's an unforgettable name for an insurance company because it's memorable, it stands out, it's unusual. Use strong titles like newspaper headlines that create intrigue. So for example, with books, the first thing people are going to look at is the title. Then they look at the front and the back, the table of contents, the first few paragraphs, and then the price. So really, you need to hook them in the beginning with the title. So great titles do at least one of the following. They make a promise, they create intrigue, they identify a need that the reader has, or they just state the content that's to follow. Okay, so for example, a promise, the 4-Hour Body, an uncommon guide to rapid fat loss, or Omega Pa self-cleaning litter box. These are explaining the promise that's going to come. Creating intrigue. Heaven is for real. A little boy's outstanding story of his trip to heaven and back. Identifying a need. Fearless. Imagine your life without fear. And then simply describing the content. Joe's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Pretty straightforward. Something that I think a lot of people don't do is spend enough time studying the best sellers in their category. I've seen a lot in the entrepreneur space where people want to create a new category or come up with something unique. And there's also this assumption that uniqueness, these blue ocean strategies, as they're often called, are the key to success. But what I actually see in the real world because I live around these people who are hugely successful, for example, on YouTube with 8 million plus subscribers, is it's not about necessarily creating something unique. It's about doing and delivering what people want. And what they want is often exemplified by the top people in the category. So for example, in my space, in this business space, one of the top influencers is Alex Hormozi. So often I reference things that he does. How does he create videos? What do his thumbnail images look like? You can do this with physical products as well. What are the top selling products on Amazon in my category? Okay, well, how can I do what they're doing and communicate in a way that is successful the way they have? So modeling after successful people is actually a more proven path to success than trying to be unique or special. And what you really want to do is overinvest in the first impression. And often that means doing things like modern packaging, or for example, the thumbnail on a YouTube video like I did here. It's an impressive, attention-grabbing thumbnail. Maybe it's the physical packaging in your product. Maybe it's the first 30 seconds of your video. Maybe it's the first 10 seconds of your video ad. Those initial impressions matter a lot, and increasingly so. Be cautious with design metaphors. People often don't get it. If you have a symbol in your imagery, people might be easily confused unless it's one that's used so often that people understand it. Often literal imagery might be better. And when you create designs, you need to evaluate them in context. So for example, thumbnail might look great on your computer screen, but is it going to look good on mobile? Is the thumbnail going to look good when it's tiny, when it's just a few pixels? Can you read it from a distance? Is it going to work on a billboard when you're driving at 100 kilometers per hour? So context really matters a lot here. And one tip is to ask your fans for input. So for example, Jonah Berger is this really successful business author from the Wharton Business School, and he did a poll on LinkedIn to try to find out which cover design is going to be the best for his book. So he's involving his customers, his fans, in the creation process, which I thought was a really cool trick, not necessarily just for getting the market research, but also for creating buzz for what he's creating. If you really want to stand out in a noisy world, you should think big. And often what that means is you have to figure out what would have to be true to achieve my goal. Like maybe you want 1 million subscribers. Well, imagine that future. What would it take to get there? Sometimes it means getting major media exposure. And you can do that, for example, by using this tool called Haro, Help a Reporter Out. Easy to get quoted in the media using that tool. You just send an email to the journalist who wants experts in certain areas. Something else to reference is Grant Cardone's book, 10X. So the whole philosophy of this book is basically set big, audacious goals rather than these minor goals. And there's also this mindset that it's more difficult to achieve marginal improvement than to achieve outstanding improvement. Because if you set the bar really high, it completely changes your mindset. It's not, oh, I wish my title was a little bit better, or I wish I could tweak that color of the CTA a little bit more. Instead, you're thinking about big opportunities, like what's the biggest magazine I can get in? Who's the biggest partner I can form? So setting big goals allows you to reach your goals. You want to create an elevator pitch for your product. So for example, with info products, the elevator pitch is the product name and category, the solution, the problem you solve, and the key benefit. In entertainment, your elevator pitch could be product name and category, conflict, the main character's ambition, and then the significance of the story. You want to have an effective email signature for all your communications. So for example, you could have your name and then your blog with a link to your speaking engagements, a link to your Twitter, your Facebook, etc. And you want to formulate a team. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to hire a full-time employee or a consultant on retainer. It could just mean you're hiring people on Upwork, you're hiring people on Fiverr. You might want a booking agent to help you get speaking engagements. You might want a coach to help you in certain areas where you need to improve. You might want a publicity agent and other collaborators like editors, copywriters, etc. So for example, I helped a millionaire in the software space write his book. I was a collaborator in that case. And you also want to look for endorsements. So in particular, celebrity endorsements, which are not necessarily people that you see on TV, but maybe they're celebrities or experts in your niche. Now, this is going to be especially true in business to business. For example, if you're trying to influence chief technology officers, well, a technical expert that they know may not be a general celebrity, but they're a celebrity in that space. And once you get an endorsement, what you want to do is leverage it to get more. So for example, let's say you get published in TechCrunch. Well, then you can go to Mashable and say, hey, I was featured in TechCrunch. Maybe you want to take a look at my product too and give it a review. Make a list of people you want endorsement from. These are going to be authorities in certain spaces, certain influential people. I use the tool SparkToro to identify them pretty easily, pretty quickly, without paying anything. And once you get endorsements, you want to display them prominently on the product itself. So for example, on the packaging and in your marketing assets. So for example, your social media ads or your webinars, etc. You want to smile with your whole face. Some people think, oh, if I keep my mouth closed, I look more like a model. In general, people are more attractive. They're going to be more drawn to you if you have a smile. And you'll see some of the most successful personal brands have done that. Photos of you should focus on your face. So for example, if you have a tiny image that's going to be used on, say, Reddit or one of these social media platforms, make sure that it's highlighting your face. And you should update them every few years because we age. Now, having an online media kit is going to be important as you push your PR. So it's going to be on your website for people who want to talk about you and your product. You should have a headline. You should have a navigation with a table of contents, your contact info, your product formats, so the various formats of your product photos, product trailers, which is a really interesting idea, creating a short video to get people excited, ramped up about your product. You see that a lot on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You want to highlight your appearances. So if you're on talk shows, podcasts, etc., you can start small too. Maybe you just got featured in a HubSpot article, something like that. Have a bio, have a product summary, have a list of interview topics / angles. This is going to help the reporters interview you. Sample interview questions, samples, for example, free chapters from your book or templates for social media posts, sample banner ads, incentives, merchandise, and media reactions. So for example, I had a product, Times Magazine gave it a raving review, so I started leveraging that for videos, for ads, etc. The most effective way to sell anything is through word of mouth. And if you want to learn more about word of mouth, I do talk about it in my courses. And I would check out McKinsey, which breaks it down into 3 stages. And I would also look at the research of Dr. Byron Sharp, where he talks about how most word of mouth actually comes from ordinary customers, and a lot of it happens offline. So I'd also look at the research of Jonah Berger, where he talks about that. So there's a lot to learn about word of mouth. But I think the critical message from this book is really, if you create a wow experience, you have something that's worth talking about. And one thing to keep in mind is that there are certain product features or attributes that have more word of mouth worthiness. So things that are highly visual, for example. People don't necessarily talk about processing speed the way they would talk about design. With TV, radio, print, ads, and billboards, only a fraction of the people you reach should be seen as potential customers or people who know your brand. So the author's argument here is that these kind of traditional wide reach media channels are a waste of money. I would say that that isn't the case with certain products. So if your product does have mass appeal and it's accessible by most people, then wide reach media is going to be great. Yes, there's going to be wastage there, but there's overall efficiency in terms of, for example, CPM or in terms of cost per 1,000 people reached. I oppose almost all one-off magazine or newspaper ads, according to the author. Doesn't think you're going to get much impact from that. And we have research too suggesting in certain cases you need a certain degree of frequency before your marketing is going to have an effect. And if you can't afford to do recurring frequency that people see it repeatedly, then it may not be worth it. All right, here's a sample of a blog post template. Lead paragraph, relevant image, main body, personal experience, and then end with a discussion or question. Blog post tips. Short posts. Now, I don't totally agree with the author on this first point. I do agree with a lot of the other arguments, but I think longer posts are what are trending now. So 3,000 words plus. But I guess it depends on your your argument for what defines short. Short paragraphs, yes, I've made this mistake a lot, especially with website copy, making paragraphs that are too long. Short sentences, great. Simple words, avoid too much jargon. Internal links. So you can't say everything in a single post, so link to other posts that you have to get people deeper into your content. Have a catchy headline? Yes. Have a strong first paragraph, which could be a story, a promise, or a startling fact that gets attention. And one of the main things here with content, online content these days, is get to the point. Don't try to set up or give too much context. That's what too many content creators do these days, is say, oh, hey, so I was walking to the store the other day and then I ran across this thing. Well, no, get into the meat of what you need to say, because people's attention spans are not that long. Ask a question at the end to get comments, and don't overreact to critics. All right, some blog ideas: a personal story, a historical event, review a book, movie, or software, comment on a quote, comment on something in the news, step-by-step instructions to achieve something, answer questions that your readers have had, make a complex task simple, explain the rationale behind a decision, and maybe it's a decision that a company made that was a complete failure, for example. I was talking about Buzz Light in one of my videos. Guide to something popular. Video interviews. Send questions to the person you interview. This is one of the things that I learned about media a long time ago. So my brothers did media tours for video games, and it always seemed like when you're watching interviews on TV, it seems like it's spontaneous and the person getting interviewed just happened to have all the answers, but that's not really how it is. It's actually more fabricated than that. Often the questions are discussed beforehand. So whether you're doing the interview or the interviewing, make sure that the general questions, or at least major themes, are discussed beforehand so that we don't have major surprises. It's a smooth conversation. The About page, you want to start with the reader's priorities. It's not necessarily about you. It's about how value is created for the reader. For landing pages, for example, a landing page promoting an ebook, have a headline, sales copy, product photos, testimonials, a guarantee. That's something you really want to point out here, is getting a guarantee and being very specific about what the guarantee is. Have an offer and a call to action. For a speaking page, have a 1-minute welcome video, a call to action, a bio, a collection of video clips, list of most requested topics, calendar of upcoming events, more relevant as you expand, and a picture of you speaking. Now, one of the arguments is that tribe building is the new marketing. And I don't think that's completely true, but there are certainly cases where that is true. And people like Seth Godin believe in this method. Where I think this is particularly important is with what are called complex contagion. So things that people don't necessarily just go and buy by themselves, but they buy it because their friends have it, or because it's a social norm, or maybe something that entails a lot of risk. So people are more likely to make a conservative choice, and a conservative choice to them is one that their tribe endorses. So tribes can be effective. Facebook groups particularly effective. Some people have been very successful building up Facebook groups. Some people have been very successful building Slack groups. I've been very successful recently with Reddit, and I focus on the advertising, but there are certain niche communities that are interested in my products, and I promote them on Reddit quite effectively. And also, I started using a software called Lemless, which is a cold email automation tool, because people were talking about it in a Facebook group I followed for email marketing or SaaS marketing, something like that. So tribe marketing is effective, but I don't think it's the only route to take. And we can see examples of where it is successful, for example, with Dave Ramsey fans. And you can tap into these tribes as well using tools like Lead Enforce, where you're able to advertise to people that follow certain influencers like Dave Ramsey. We can identify influencers using Spark Toro. There's all sorts of tricks we can use here with influencer marketing. Twitter advertising also has the option to target lookalikes of influencers. Personally, I haven't had a lot of success with that, but hopefully they'll revise their algorithm and it'll become a proven method in the future. Some tips for getting blog traffic. A single post can catch fire. So for example, I wrote a blog post praising an accounting firm for having the best web design I had ever seen in their industry. And that kind of positivity of praising, it really took off and became a viral post. For traffic, it's important to have fast load time. People really underestimate how important this is. People will abandon pages very quickly, and the SEO algorithms recognize this. You want to have short paragraphs, sentences, etc. Improve your SEO metadata. Write content that is worth sharing, so word of mouth potential, something that gets people excited. You want to guest post for other blogs, and then what you can do is can promote it. Now, I would even say that if you get your article posted on something like HubSpot or TechCrunch or New York Times, advertise that article using something like a traffic campaign rather than just sending people to your homepage. I would recognize that a lot of elite bloggers really started this way. They just piggybacked off blogs that already had a lot of traction. Again, I recommend using Haro, Help a Reporter Out, to get published in major publications, and going to other websites like HubSpot, where they have very specific guidelines on what they want, things like original research to get published. Consider promoting older posts. So your posts have accumulated a lot of data over time, and you can see what's successful, what's not, and find the best ones and promote them, advertise them, repost them, etc. Another trick is to give stuff away for free. So, for example, a book or product samples. Ryan Holiday talks about this extensively, how you could take maybe the first couple chapters of your book or reformat your long form content into short form and just give it away for free. And what he did was get affiliates to give away this free thing, and then embedded in that was the potential to upgrade to pay for the full offering. Multiple free products can be given to top influencers. That way they're incentivized to share it with other people. So for example, when I was promoting video games, I gave away free coupons to try it out, to give it to influencers. And then with that, I have other coupons, other cards that they can distribute to other people. You can give away a free workbook, a template, a free membership, a free seminar. And in the seminar, you can promote the paid product. So an example of giving away free stuff that worked for me was identified the top veterinarian influencers. They were largely podcasters. So what I did was I gave them a free microphone, mailed it to them, regardless of where they were, Australia, etc. And I also gave them a free VIP account to our software. Don't make your titles boring. This is a huge problem people have. They have boring writing. Get people excited. Think like a journalist. Think like a newspaper. Put energy into what you're doing. Use stories, illustrations, and metaphors. Your prose is often preachy and didactic and dry as dust. Add some energy. This isn't an academic article you're writing for university when you're creating content in the real world. Keep current on what people are discussing. So, for example, you can follow Twitter hashtags. AI is a huge trending thing in my space right now, so I've been paying a lot of attention to that, seeing how I can apply AI in my applications. Use hashtags. So, for example, hashtag Cat 2011 would be for a specific conference. You can tap into those conversations. Consider using social media management tools like Hootsuite and Buffer to make your marketing more efficient. Share valuable content. Reply to others publicly to help get more attention and get noticed more. Have an easy to remember username, not blah, 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 692x31. Don't post when you're angry. Generally, you want to be seen as a positive person. Use a URL shortener so that your content doesn't get filled up with extensive HTML code. Bit.ly is the tool I use. Now for interviews. Recognize that you are not the star of the show, the host is. So you don't want to embarrass the host. Or perhaps more accurately, the audience is the real star. Your job is to keep them interested in the topic so they don't change the dial. Don't expect the interviewer to have done his homework. Make the host look smart by providing the producer with a list of questions to ask. I wish I had spent more time on this when I first started doing podcast interviews, was making sure I had a list of questions beforehand. Listen to and affirm the question. So even if you disagree with the question, affirm it, give it some legitimacy as a fair question. Don't just end up in combat mode with the person interviewing you. Keep your answer short, be energetic. So for example, if you're on a call without camera, just stand up, walk around, smile. It'll put you in a more energetic mindset. Direct people to your offer when you're doing the interview. So keep referencing your book, for example, and join Toastmasters. So I was a division director in Toastmasters, helped me tremendously to improve my public speaking, and it will for you too. Use the 20-to-1 rule. So this is basically delivering 20 valuable posts or educational posts or entertaining posts for every one that's self-serving, where you're just trying to sell something or get people into a sales call or get people to buy your product. In other words, deliver more value than you ask for. The other thing you want to do is monitor your brand. And one way to do that is with branded search terms. Now, a lot of people, when they do marketing, they're only focused on direct response. Did this generate leads? Did this specific ad bring in money, profit for my business? But at scale, it doesn't really work very well. So instead, you need to think about brand building. And when you do brand building campaigns, one way to measure is using something like Google Trends with your brand name. So I just did the example of Tony Robbins, and we can see, well, did the interest in Tony Robbins increase over time? Well, there was a spike here. Maybe that's because of a conference that he was at or some major advertising campaign. So you can use this as one way. You can also use social listening tools to see if people are talking about your brand more, so that your brand marketing is effective, your PR is effective. Respond quickly to criticism so you can control the narrative. I recently saw a debate on LinkedIn where people were saying, well, if there's some PR disaster where people are criticizing your product, should you say nothing or should you really strongly react to it? And I think general best practice is you want to control the narrative, so make sure you're involved in the conversation. Otherwise, people are just going to gossip and come up with their own explanations and their own arguments. You need to be able to rebuttal that. And lastly here, monetization. There's different ways. So authors receive royalties, speakers receive speaking fees. You could, for example, have affiliate links from Amazon Associates. So in one of my YouTube channels, I review products and I have links to the products, expensive products, and I get commission from that. In other cases, I'm just promoting my own products. So selling your own products is really the ultimate form of monetization. And you can also just sell ad space. So again, I know a lot of really successful YouTubers with millions of subscribers. They get millions, like 80 million views on a video. They make all their money just off the advertising. So look at these. Maybe there's a variety of these you want to monetize. Maybe there's one you want to focus on, but find a way to make money to monetize your platform.